If you like technology today, it is easy to think we are the smartest people to ever lived. But what if our ancestors had tools that worked like modern machines thousands of years ago, while we are diving into gadgets that seem impossible for their age? And did you know some items show that the past was much more high-tech than we thought? It makes you wonder how they knew these secrets. Let's look at the mechanical wonders and smart designs that left modern scientists feeling completely stumped and confused. Number 15, the Agastya Samshitita battery. This one sounds like a total conspiracy theory, but modern science actually backed it up. There's this ancient Indian text called the Agastya Samshitita sitting in a library in Ujjain. It literally gives a recipe for a battery. A copper plate, copper sulfate, wet sawdust, and zinc powder inside an earthen pot. The text calls the energy Mitra Varuna. Now, scientists actually built this thing according to the instructions, and it produced over 1.1 volts. The text even says, if you chain 100 of these pots together, you can split water into gases, hydrogen and oxygen, though they use different names. We're talking about 3,000 years ago. They had the tech to generate electricity, but apparently, they just didn't have anything better to do with it than perform magic water tricks. It makes you wonder what else is buried in those old books that we're just ignoring because it sounds too impossible for the time. Number 14, Siloam Tunnel. Check this out. Talk about a high-stakes DIY project. Back in the 8th century BCE, the people in Jerusalem knew the Assyrians were coming to wreck the place. They needed water, fast. So they dug this third-of-a-mile tunnel through solid rock to bring water from the Gihon spring into the city. Here's the crazy part. Two teams started at opposite ends and dug toward each other through the dark. If you look at the tunnel today, there are these weird kinks where they clearly messed up the direction and had to pivot. But they actually met in the middle. We know this because of the Siloam inscription they left behind, basically bragging about the moment the picks met. It's a bit of a miracle of ancient engineering, carved entirely by hand just to survive a siege. It's 1,700 feet of, "We refuse to die of thirst," and honestly, the grit is inspiring. Number 13, the Greenland wood maps. Okay, so you know how we get lost even with GPS? Back in 1885, this Danish explorer Gustav Holm was cruising around East Greenland and met an Inuit hunter named Kunit. They do a little trade, basic supplies for these weird chunks of carved wood. At first, they look like random driftwood, but they're actually 3D maps of the coastline north of Ammasalak. But here is the kicker. They weren't meant for steering a boat. The Inuit used them as storytelling props. Imagine sitting around a fire and pointing to deep grooves in the wood to show exactly where you had to haul your kayak over land while chasing a seal. It's basically the world's first tactile 3D infographic. One piece shows the mainland and the other handles the offshore islands. It's such a vibe, turning navigation into a shared oral history instead of just a dry set of directions. Number 12, Inuit snow goggles. You'll love this because it's basically Stone Age Oakleys. We always think of sunglasses as a beach thing, right? However, the Inuit were experts on snow blindness long before we had UV ratings. There's this specific pair in the Science Museum in London that dates back to 1801. They aren't glass, though. They're carved out of rawhide and pine. They just have these tiny horizontal slits for the eyes. By narrowing the field of vision, it cuts the glare from the sun bouncing off the Arctic ice, so you don't go blind while hunting. Plus, they came with their own little wooden carrying case. Honestly, they look like something out of a sci-fi movie. It's remarkable to think that while Europeans were barely figuring out fashion, people in North America were utilizing raw materials to invent high-performance safety gear that still functions perfectly today. Number 11. Birjand aqueducts. Wait, check this out. Some construction workers in Birjand, Iran, were just minding their own business recently when they accidentally smashed into a massive hidden water system. It turns out this elaborate network of aqueducts was built specifically to keep a local castle hydrated. But the part that actually kills me? They were using pottery crocks as a filtration system. It's basically a 2,000-year-old Brita filter. Because the pipes are so incredibly fragile and old, archaeologists are literally having a crisis right now, debating whether to dig them up and risk a total collapse or just leave them sitting there. Since the town used to be a fortress with 60 towers, having a secure, purified water line was basically the ultimate flex for the local government. It's just wild that something so high-tech for its time was sitting under a construction site for centuries. Number 10. Sri Lankan wind-powered furnaces. I was reading about this and it blew my mind. These guys in Sri Lanka were literally harnessing the storm in the 9th century. Iron smelting is usually this super dangerous, sweaty job with bellows. But they found a way to let the weather do the heavy lifting. They built these forced draft furnaces on the western sides of hills near Samanalawewa. Why? To catch the freaking monsoon winds. When the monsoons hit, the wind was strong enough to blast the furnace into high heat mode, creating top-tier high-carbon steel. It's like the world's first green industrial park. Archaeological evidence shows this was a massive industry back then. Of course, the poor workers had to stand outside in a literal monsoon to keep things running, so safety was a relative term. But hey, using a seasonal hurricane to power your steel mill? That is some next-level thinking from over 1,000 years ago. Number 9. Clay hand grenades. You'd swear the hand grenade was some gritty 20th century trench invention. But nope, the 1300s had us beat. Check this out. Divers found this acorn-shaped clay pot off the coast of Israel back in 2016, and it turns out it was a Crusader-era explosive. It's got this little hole at the top for a fuse, and they'd fill the belly with basically high-proof alcohol or some nasty flammable liquid. Picture a knight on a rocking wooden ship, lighting this ceramic acorn and hurling it at an enemy hull. It wasn't exactly a nuclear blast, but on a ship made of dry wood and tar, total nightmare fuel. It's wild that the silhouette is almost identical to what soldiers carry today. They were basically throwing Molotov cocktails in a jar 700 years ago, proving that humans have always been terrifyingly creative when it comes to breaking things from a distance. Number 8. Gowrie Wall. Imagine a massive stone wall stretching 71 miles across Iran, and literally nobody in the West talks about it. It's called the Gowrie Wall by the locals, and it's every bit as beefy as Hadrian's Wall in the UK, but it's just sitting there in the dirt, mostly ignored by history books. We're talking 35 million square feet of stone. It's about 10 feet high and 13 feet thick, which suggests it was a serious defensive line. But here's the kicker. There isn't a single official document from the time explaining who built it or why. Archaeologists have poked around and found some crumbled pottery and old building foundations along the path, but the who and why are still a total ghost story. It's just this giant silent monument to a massive workforce that vanished, leaving a 1,600-year-old mystery cutting right through the Iranian landscape. Number 7. Corsican asbestos ceramics. Here is a do-not-try-this-at-home moment from the Iron Age. People living on the island of Corsica about 1,800 years ago were apparently obsessed with making their pottery indestructible. They would go to the northeast side of the island, grab raw asbestos fibers, smash them up with pebbles, and knead them right into the clay paste. The result? A rustic version of modern-day nanofiber coating that made the ceramic super heat-resistant. What's even crazier is that this secret recipe stayed trapped in one tiny part of the island. It was never written down and vanished when that specific group of people moved or died out. Scientific papers didn't even catch up to this idea until 1838. It's mind-blowing to think some Iron Age guy in a hut had a better grip on reinforced materials than modern scientists did for nearly 2 millennia. All right, now let's talk about number 6. Damascus steel Indian swordsmiths were basically the rock stars of the metallurgical world for a solid 2 millennia, and they guarded their Wootz steel recipe like a state secret. Everyone in the Middle Ages was obsessed with these blades because they were impossibly hard and had those wavy, water-like patterns. The process was intense, melting everything down in a tiny crucible mold and pouring it into a cast, a technique India mastered 2,000 years before the rest of the world even had a clue. Even Alexander the Great's journals mention how insane the quality was. The recipe was never written down. It was just whispered from father to son. That's why India basically had a monopoly on the global steel market for centuries. It's kind of tragic, though, because the secret eventually died out, leaving us modern folks trying to reverse engineer something that ancient guys were doing in their backyards by memory. Number 5. Gursu Bridge. You won't believe what was sitting in the Iraqi dirt for 5,000 years, being called a collapsed temple by mistake. Back in the 1920s, people found these baked brick ruins in the ancient Sumerian city of Gursu, but they had zero clue what they were looking at because the river underneath had dried up ages ago. It wasn't until the 21st century that some researchers found clay tablets nearby that literally mentioned a bridge, and everyone went, "Oh, that's what that is." It's officially the oldest bridge in the world, built brick by painful brick over what probably took years of work. It's kind of a tragedy, though, because since everyone thought it was just a pile of unimportant rocks for decades, it's been left out in the wind and rain. Now it's a total scramble to save it before the elements finish what time couldn't. Number 4. Egyptian nanotech hair dye. So, it turns out the ancient Egyptians were doing actual nanoscience while the rest of the world was basically eating dirt. In 2006, this French scientist teamed up with L'Oreal, yes, the makeup brand, to study 4,000-year-old hair samples. They discovered that Egyptian chemists were using wet chemistry to create lead chloride compounds, mixing them with lead sulfide to make black nanocrystals of galena. When you slapped this paste on your hair, it reacted with your natural keratin to turn your hair jet black permanently. There is no way you stumble onto lead-based permanent nano dye by accident. They were basically running a high-end hair salon using molecular-level engineering before anyone even knew what a molecule was. It's a bit scary when you think about the lead exposure, but you can't deny they were the absolute masters of looking sharp through science. Number 3. Torquetum. In the 12th century, an absolute legend named Jabir ibn Aflah basically built a medieval computer made of brass. This thing is called a torquetum, and it's honestly more advanced than some stuff we used in the 1700s. It could take an astronomical position and instantly convert the data between 3 different coordinate systems. No math required from the user. It's basically a physical calculator for the stars. What's funny is that a famous mathematician named Ptolemy probably had the idea way earlier, but never actually built it. By the time the 1500s rolled around, these things were so high status that people were getting them custom made in solid gold. We don't have any of the original 12th century versions left. The oldest ones we can find are from the 1500s, but it just proves that analog doesn't mean simple. These guys were doing complex data conversion while the rest of Europe was still figuring out basic plumbing. Number 2. Vimanas. So, if you look at ancient Sanskrit texts from over 3,500 years ago, like the Mahabharata, they talk about Vimanas, which were basically ancient Indian fighter jets. I know it sounds like some sci-fi fan fiction, but the detail is what gets me. One text called the Vaimanika Shastra describes these things as having 31 separate parts, including 300 pivot joints, control panels, and wheels. They even claim these ships left a trail of flames when they took off. Now, we don't have a crashed one sitting in a museum, but it's super weird that multiple independent writers all described the same flying technology as if they were standing right there watching it. It was supposedly a rich person-only perk for the ruling class. Whether it was a collective hallucination or some lost tech, the fact that they were writing about articulated joints and propulsion thousands of years ago is a massive head-scratcher. Number 1. Chinese magnetic compass. Forget everything you heard about the compass being some boring nautical invention. It actually started as a side effect of fortune-telling. Long ago in China, soothsayers were playing around with lodestones on these magic boards to predict the future, and they realized the stones always pointed the same way. Fast forward to the year 1040, and we get the first record of the iron fish. You'd basically float this magnetized metal fish in water, and it would swivel north, giving the Chinese a 300-year head start on navigation before Europe even saw one in the 14th century. It explains why they were so dominant at sea. While everyone else was guessing where the stars went on a cloudy night, these guys had a tiny metal fish telling them exactly where to go. It's just funny that the thing that changed global trade started as a tool for psychics. So, that's all for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Press the like and subscribe button for future updates. Thanks for watching. Take care. I'll catch you in the next one.